Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be presenting a presentation that is related to an ideology that is basically found in the observation looking into the system overlay itself, and I called it the Terracotta Army, a petrification of the mind via the corrupted overlay, namely a Sefirotic system, an alchemical and metaphysical observation. I chose the word terracotta because the word, if you look at it, there's the link. The etymology of the word terracotta and the meaning means baked earthenware, or in its material sense as an earthenware substrate is a clay-based unglazed or glazed ceramic where the fired body is porous. In applied art, craft, construction, and architecture, terracotta is the term normally used for sculpture made in earthenware and also for various practical uses, including vessels, flower pots, water and wastewater pipes. This is the aspect or the discussion in the previous video where I'd mentioned that I will be talking about the Kabbalah, but it's not going to be a history lesson. It's going to be an observation only and my commentary on it. And today I chose this title in relevance to the previous presentation, as I've said, in order to understand what the system looks like from an objective perspective. It is possible. I've heard that many have said that it's impossible to look at the system without becoming involved in it. I say it is not impossible to do that if you know how to do it. And if you struggle to observe the system overlay for what it is, and you are finding yourself trapped within it, you need to do some homework, some inner homework. And we would need to break it down, this presentation, so that it's much more refined and in the understanding. I also want to reiterate by saying that the understanding of the information must be from a critical thinking perspective. It must be from an intellectual, intelligent perspective. It must not be from an over-emotional, fear-driven perspective. So if you feel stressed, don't listen to this video. If you feel calm and you are collected in your conscious thoughts, then I would suggest listen to it. We do not know, however, that any and all relevant subjects in terms of beliefs and religions are based on what it is, belief systems. This is basically the understanding of the information, belief systems in a kabalistic manner. And from the last context, the belief in it is what gives it power, the belief in something more than what is within. And I chose the Sefirot system of belief as an example to clarify the insights. So think of this presentation as an alchemical, metaphysical presentation, observation only, where we are able to take a substance and clarify it and bring it to heat to see what residual forms are still in the mix. And so more specifically, the Sefirot and what the ultimate belief structure is the belief structure in itself that harbors as much power, if not more, as the likes of men believing in religious icons or idols. So it's as powerful as that. Religion in itself is based on faith of and into an external, no matter what it is or who it is. Icons and idols are always present to facilitate this power of faith and belief structure externally. And the Sefirot is exactly the same thing. It holds the same power, if not more, as I've said, which requires faith and experience, just as the same as Christians who are followers and venerating the cross as a symbol as well. That defines Christianity as symbol-based. I will also reference the Kabbalah in this material as also said, but it is not going to be a history lesson. I've said that again. Please keep it in mind. It is merely an observation. It will be a reference to the structure that holds up the Terracotta army in itself. I used the Terracotta army as an example because they are not statues of veneration, but buried asleep, and by sleeping they have chosen to buy into the system or the overlay in and its frequencies. So how does Kabbalah fit into this? The tree of life, or the Sefirot, is based on natural laws of the universe. Before it was called the Sefirot, of course. It was actually only to be understood as the natural laws of the original creator, and for the human creation, laws were also formulated. There are in actuality perhaps dozens more, but are not related to the subject at hand. And so the realm in which you exist, your realm dynamics, it interchanges with the realm around you. In simple form, what you think is what you create. What you think and believe in is also created, even if it's fear. If you think and believe in fear and drama and the apocalypse and the end of days, then that is how your world will be for you. That is your world, it is not my world. If you understand in simple terms, there was once a world before it became overlaid, but that existed in a way that would be beneficial for the nature of man to explore and to grow and to heal from. And yes, there was an adversary placed within the midst to challenge the natural progression of mankind. However, the adversary had become a little bit more powerful over time because so many people had become lazy and apathetic towards focusing within. There was also laws that were created, the first creation law, but the adversary had not much challenge from the human creation, and I'm saying it because this is what it presents itself to be like now. This is, of course, aside from the many pockets of realities in which many of us live within. We needed to create our own realm dynamics to hold steadfast to our reality bubble. And so we review back into time, which is also merely a construct of space and magnetism as a modality, or in simple terms, a moment of measurement, that things did change up in quite the extreme form. But this is only because the system worshippers, the materialists, the Darwinians, the involutionists, sects of sacrifices had become desperate. You see, I don't believe, and I say this in a strong way, that these many systems that had been presented in the most covert manner can hold much of anything. And what I'm saying is that what you are experiencing is an extreme reaction to many of us who have basically denounced its existence in our lives. Unless, of course, as I've said before, that the system requires a percentage to believe in it for its power, that God needs followers. That God that is now wanting to lock all those who have believed in it once into place, basically building a temple in this timeline. And you need to figure this out for yourself. So how do we review the system without contributing to its magnetic, hypnotic powers? How do we resist our energetic spirit from contributing to the system God? It is very possible to exist within it without it swallowing you up or without it becoming part of what you present. As I've said, you just have to focus on what is within you. That is quite simple if you follow the rules. Remember, I said that I was going to discuss Kabbalah. Well, I'm not going to present it just for what it is and analyze it to death. I won't be doing that. That is not going to serve anything to anyone. I do, however, want to link the information that we discuss where I found it on, which you will find on my website in more detail, about the Kabbalah as related to the system. It is its power node, and I'll explain it further. It is the most important power or key for the system to exist within. as it's based on Old Testament laws as well as its Old Testament God. And I do have a summary of a link that I found which explains the following in quote. In short, the Kabbalah is the belief that the world is created and sustained by 10 channels or Sefirot of divine plenty. The Sefirot are complex, each with many different meanings and gradation. Kabbalah also presents duality, or that is the end quote there. And I want to say Kabbalah also presents duality. One view as presented as God, while the other view is presented as man. So you're looking at a two-stroke engine, shall we call it that. Let me also say this. The God that is referenced here is the creator of the tree, of that specific tree, which is based on the 10 laws of Abraham, which of course is also the original or the adapted version of Brahma, the Hindu god. So already we can see that the understanding of natural laws had become a little bit mashed up, like things always usually do when they are involved. When you're in the system overlay, when you live to worship it, it will be mashed up for you. You'll be mashed into it. Your inner laws become blurred. Your boundaries become blurred. You become weak and you have nothing else to function within. The Abrahamic God is a patriarchal influence, but also masculine. However, what they've been doing is they've been trying to transhumanize or transfer polarities back and forth over continents as well. The only reason it was presented as masculine is because they already knew that in order to get things done, for things to be created, they merely needed to create or bring into perspective a masculinized energy. Now, if you go back to further previous work that I've done, you'll see where I've explained that the patriarch or the masculine god or the Abrahamic god is worshipped as the moon, was originally worshipped as a moon god, which was once male and then female and then male and then female. So it changed sex quite a lot. So I don't need to go into details too deep about that, but I will find the link there for you to peruse the previous work. Which means with enough dominance and submission of people to worship or worship to the god, there would be more and more feminine energy required for that particular purpose to take place. So in other words, a nation, a country, can be seen as a motherland or a fatherland. That land, its nation, the nation itself, if it's a motherland, the nation is feminine. It means they are receptive to what that fatherland, country, government, system, or gateway to the system, to the system overlay presents. If it's a feminine or a motherland, the people in it are masculine. It means the people are working into the land what they require from the land to be presented back to them. So understand that meaning of masculine, which means creator, and feminine, which means the one that receives the seed in creation. The child is the offspring or the creation itself. Metaphysically speaking, and I will bring this up again, if you speak to someone or with someone, you take up the metaphysical position of masculine because you are the speaker. And the person that listens to what you're saying is adapting to the feminine perspective or polarity, which means that person, male or female, will receive the seed of knowledge that you, the speaker, will convey over to them. They will then take that seed, it will mold in their minds, and they will become pregnant, metaphysically speaking, with that seed. And that seed will then become generated into an offspring, an action, a result of what you said. And in the same way, you can look at cults and groups where there's a lot of control and conflict by way of presenting violence to people, one-sided views of people to one another, so that there is always a conflict that takes place, so that the energy itself is highly conflicted, so that the actual creation process is that much more ecstatic. And that is a subject for a completely another day, not for now. And so I come back to explaining to you about the Sefirot, which consist out of 10 channels. It is also related to 10 commandments, which is the Abrahamic laws. And so it must, as these 10 laws have been administered, there has to be an eroding that has to be taken place for the 10 laws or to exist. Even if these 10 laws have basically hijacked the natural original laws of what was once existing, for people to have known, actually. So you can look at history in books where you can see Greek versus Judeo. There's the difference already in place. Romans versus Jewish people, etc., etc. Black people versus white people. There's a conflict that takes place all the time. It's constantly reiterated so that it has to be there by the ones that have been presenting and manipulating the original natural laws. So in other words, racism would have died out long time ago had people followed through with what they were busy doing. Except the young ones seem to be needing something to believe in. So if your mind is feeble enough, you'll accept anything. So as I've said, this work, this specific presentation is for those to be critically thinking. If you're not in a good space, don't listen to it. We also know that when we look into this world, we can see how many copy artists have been working super hard at replicating many things, writing words, taking certain things out of context, presenting other words, new false pseudo-philosophies, false embodiments of things, like a parasite, very much so, that is trying to prevent its own dying off. It will continue with creating absurd realm representations of things, of ideas, of stuff. I mean, you think you're looking at the zebra, meanwhile it's a horse behind a bars. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You have to be on top of it within your conscious thoughts. It's very satanical, as in the cult itself. However, Satanists can only sell his or her view to you easily if they pander to your ego and your mind, and how they play on your ideals, exemplify social Darwinism. And these days, humans are referred to as animals, the human animal, which is Darwinian. In a movie that we've seen previously, it's about Norsemen, not going to give you the title here. The man and his son were at a ceremony, and they were basically debased to become dogs or rabbit dogs within human flesh. In fact, they had said, you are dogs within human flesh. That is already telling you what they're trying to drive at. And so the 10 Sefirot had been implemented in this very same way, an overlay of original natural laws, eroding natural laws, making it adaptable and personified to pander to even their own egos as they sell this to you by way of a religion or whatever it is. If he uses things that are familiar to you, which panders to your ego, something that makes you want to buy into it, don't forget the lanternfish here. Not all the lights in the night are friendly. So, let me explain a little bit deeper here. The Sefirot, in its structure, presents the natural laws that humanity right now is mostly familiar with, the 7 lower Sefirot. It is from their work that I'm referring this part. They also explain that the lower Sefirot is part of the existence for humanity here. If you look to find out if there are any 7 higher rules, you can't find it. Ironic, isn't it? So the 7 lower Sefirot is really based on lower base behavior, primal ideologies, minds that have turned to stone, hence the Terracotta army. Sadly, through consent, of course, the Sefirot also describes, quote, the lower 7 Sefirot directly act on the world, while, in brackets, those Sefirot above them are abstract aspects of consciousness, end bracket, and they each have a biblical personality associated with them. These associations work in 2 ways. One can understand more about the biblical figures through the Sefirot connected with them, and one can learn more about the nature of each Sephirah when seeing its corresponding biblical figure, end quote. Therefore, you can place anyone in any place, in any part of the Sefirot. Actually, that's what they say. You can put anyone and anything in those containers of the laws, and that law could hold that person or that idea or that ideology in place. So think of the Sefirot as a type of contract with the natural laws tied into it. So what does the Sefirot have to do with the Terracotta army? As I've said, if you've agreed to certain things, you will have become petrified to that law. You'd become constructed into or built with. You become the rock or the brick that is being used to build that temple, whatever temple it is. Even, we know that they all have temples. I won't be going into that. So natural laws have been used after it has been manipulated and edited for people to believe in, even those who worship it in this form. It's a serious controlling mechanism that, as I've said, locks people into place. You become a stone. This is why the God of the system overlay has been so successful at doing what it's doing. Over and over, so many examples of odd stuff, as I've also said, rituals and sacrifices. If you don't know, well, then just please go to the previous video again about the Russian doll and listen to that presentation again. The belief that the God of the system overlay, as I've said, it is a devourer. A devourer also is called a consumer. If you are eating and eating and eating and non-stop eating, you become a consumer. It's another word for a worm that tends to eat, so it can become eventually change its body. So I can see that is very much also related. It's also well protected because they say in their quote, in their works, Master of the worlds, you are one, but not in a numerical sense. You are exalted above all the exalted ones, hidden from all the hidden ones. No thought can grasp you at all. You are he who has brought forth 10 garments, and we call them 10 Sefirot and revealed worlds, and through them you conceal yourself from man. End quote. That is a very powerful quote to explain to you exactly what the use is for these laws. If you do any deeper work in terms of this anomaly, you can become pretty much you can literally feel your eyesight being affected by it. I've experienced that, and I've mentioned it before. You feel like you want to go blind, literally. So there is that as a type of belief system or a type of, let's say, curse that's put in there, or contract that if you try to research things in that manner, you are physiologically also affected by it. So, question here. Is this God of the Sefirot Kabbalah more powerful, or the hidden twin, evil twin of an original creator, such as what Carl Jung wrote about the Antichrist and that God is dead and all of that shit? So my answer to you is no. because the original creator does not require objects of man-made mentalism to define it. In the notes of John from the biblical reference and Nag Hammadi scriptures, I have a quote here that is very accurately describing the presence of the original creator. The PDF will be on my website for you to look at. It starts off with he, and I will just tell you that he means creator. So understand the masculine and feminine aspect here, because we know that the original creator is not just he, it is all. So he is the invisible spirit, of whom it is not right to think of him as a god, in small g, or something similar, for he is more than a god, since there is nothing above him, for no one lords it over him, for he does not exist in something inferior to him, since everything exists in him. For it is he who establishes himself. He is eternal, since he does not need anything. He is total perfection. He does not lack anything, that he might be completed by it. Rather, he is always completed, perfect in light. He is limitable, since there is no one prior to him to set limits to him. Doesn't need a Sefirot, I'm adding that in. Doesn't need any of these things to be defined as, I'm adding that in. I'll continue. He is unsearchable, since there exists no one prior to him to examine him. He is immeasurable, since there was no one prior to him to measure him. He is invisible, since no one saw him. He is eternal, since he exists eternally. He is ineffable, since no one was able to comprehend him, to speak about him. He is unnameable, since there is no one prior to him to give him a name. He is immeasurable light, which is pure, holy, and immaculate. He is ineffable, being perfect in incorruptibility. He is not in perfection, not in blessedness, nor in divinity, but he is far superior. He is not corporeal, nor is he incorporeal. He is neither large, nor is he small. So, end quote. As I've said, the PDF is on my website for you to peruse if you're interested in that. And so we need to understand the symbology as masculine, like I've said, and refer to it as creator, which is masculine. Now, let me explain to you how creation works again, so that you will understand why this is very critical, because you need to keep your mind about you. When I say here is referenced to as creator, whereas creator seeds, creation as feminine, and creation itself is then the son or the offspring or the child of the creation, the actions that are following. This is noted as the first creation or the cycle of mankind. This is why I call this energy as Great Spirit, because I don't want to give it a man-made name. So if you don't know what I'm saying, please review all my works on my channel again. Therefore, the framework called the Sefirot uses words that are based on symbolism of old tongues, where these external ideas were deified, the worship of flesh. The terracotta man or soldier is nothing more than already the product of a transmigration or transhuman product in the offspring. The terracotta army is a personification of the sleeping soldier of the soldiers who were buried with their emperor, sadly never woke up, always stayed in servitude. The soldier is petrified in his mind, body, soul, and spirit, and along with it, the understanding of what free will was and is. Therefore, think of the Sefirot as the framework of the system in itself for the Abrahamic God, or the devourer of the overlay. Remember, a man-made God needs to live in a temple. It has its universe already. This year is the building of their temple. And it's up to you to decide if you want to be part of the temple building, part of the bricks. With that being said, as always, there is nothing new in the world. Mostly all things that exist is a replication of itself in one way or another. And so, except for those who are unique within the sacred connection to their fire-branded spirit, their fire-branded DNA. If you truly exist within the great spirit of your inner essence, you will truly understand that you do not need to have effigies of any kind, beliefs of anything. You do not need to be partaking in the fake system overlay and its presentations that are constantly fractals over fractals over fractals overlay in construct being made. No one has ever asked me why I say fire-branded spirit and DNA. So I'll answer you if you've never actually wondered about it, but I'm going to tell you anyway. It means that you are alive. It means that you are an original created entity, a being within the original authentic individuality of the uncreated creator, and you know who you are. It is a requirement for you to not think with your emotions when you're listening to this presentation. I will reiterate it again, that you cannot reason with emotions. When I refer to this, it means you cannot reason mentally and critically with an overactive imagination and emotions of fear, drama, and anxiety. Or you stay transfixed in the system. You become part of the Terracotta army. The system is worldwide and ancient and has been functioning for a very long time. The knowledge within your operating system, your consciousness, your thoughts, your heart, your spirit, your soul, your body. That means how you think and how you feel is important to it. Like I said, there are mind, body, soul, and spirit. Those are the gates that the system overlay needs to break down to get to you. And to the minions who operate within it, they are all linked in and have tied together and have agreed to become part of that building system, that mechanism. Their unity is their strength. And so think of therapists who talk about their patients behind your back. Think of priests and or doctors who discuss their diagnoses with one another and slowly devise plans to perhaps present even more ideals and ideologies for you to use, to buy more medicine, etc., etc. Your belief systems are required at any given point in time. It's beyond the idea of the straw man. The straw man is really just a very limited understanding of what we're talking about. And so if you think that someone prominent is part of the system, then be sure that that person will present to you whether they are or not. And 9 out of 10 times, if you ever wonder about it, and I'm talking to those who are aware, you will know. And so it's common knowledge that the original creation template it's been set out for it to be corrupted. You see, when the creation or the kingdom was within and working within, what was important for them was to lock out or kick out the original creator. So basically to try and corrupt the template of the original creator by introducing a man-made God or many plurals of it, versions of it. Like I said, fractals of things with a lot of sacrifice and rituals, of course. So it then became a system overlaid by the Ministry of Magic's powers to persuade their own minions and who used the same symbology but split it up into duality. And so remember the chess game, refer to my last video, please. The ministers of magic use people who have given consent to become subjected to the belief of the worship of the external as a law, and so was captured by it. Therefore, the systems of reference of each character in the Sefirot was always originally related to an original creator. You need to understand this very clearly. So only when the lines were drawn into the diagram, as you can see, to create a construct had it become a replication of falsified framework to trap mankind within it. And so what I'm saying is the Sefirot, the characters, the qualities of each character, wisdom, understanding, knowledge, kindness, etc., kingdom, kingship, foundation, all of these things, love, all of these things are part of the natural laws that have existed prior to the false overlay, to the false system overlay, or to that fake God, which basically took the same stuff and just scrambled it up so that you will understand, you will believe in something else. And so I said in my last video that mankind has been born on the cross, and this means that mankind had agreed to be subjected, to be trapped within the Sefirot. So when I say you've agreed to it, I'm saying you may have agreed to it at some point in a lifetime that you've had, where you were completely not aware, or you were innocent, or any of these things. But by now you should have been able to free yourself from that. You should be, this is why you are here on this channel, and why you are also supporting other channels such as mine that are presenting to you absolute clear truth and clarity. And so you revoke the agreement to become subjected to false beliefs, constructs, and laws externally. You close your eyes and think, and while you think, you ask yourself, who am I? Where am I? And you look for the path to the original creator through your heart. This has been spoken about lots, so please find it on the channel. So if you look at the system, if you look at the framework, if you look at the Sefirot, you'll see that in 2019, the last hijacking process started of the crown, or the Keter, and the Chokmah, wisdom. All the other aspects had over time been taken over systematically by the false god prior. So all of these aspects on this diagram must already have been implemented within you, so that you are not able to, what I'm saying is you would have had to have these principles of wisdom within you before any of these things had taken place for you to not become hijacked. Okay, so what I'm saying is understand the qualities, wisdom, understanding, knowledge, kindness, strength, etc., 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 are all parts of the natural law. Read up about the natural laws, understand it, and then implement it in your life. And if you've implemented it in your life, you'll understand that if you've already implemented the original correct laws, then you would not become hijacked. Your mind would still be free. Your kitter, or your crown, would not be hijacked from you. So let me explain this again in a simpler version. The natural laws of the original creator have always been and are endless, and they pertain to all things, including to mankind. The Sefirot is a reworked system, transformed system, that presents it as man-made law to itself, worshipping a god, a man-made god that has changed sex over centuries. And that God is an Abrahamic entity, or it could even be Babylonian since before that. So this is not even related to any particular race at all. That thing has always been there. It's always been devouring and working and operating the system for you. So many rituals have been done to build this framework though. So if they call it a tree of life, it is the opposite of it. If they say, take this medicine, don't take it. Do you follow me? I hope you get my point. So in their knowledge of the laws of their verse, their metaverse, the original science and the laws of nature is also known to them, but bound together so that you can never really know the depths of things. And I'm saying you don't have to dig in so deep, of course. It doesn't help you. All their knowledge is dead anyway. It's just reworked. So go within, connect to your heart, allow yourself to connect to the original creator. The Sefirot, as it was rewritten, as it stands, is the lock of the system, the framework, What it has used is the living original energy of spirit to key you into it. Even if you don't believe in it, or if you are familiar with it in esoterics or hermetics or whatever religion it is, it doesn't mean there's no name to it. It still uses the same principles of what was alive. Each and every one of these have been hijacked by your consent. Here's a quote from another site that talk about the Sefirot as well. The links will be on my channel, on my website. Please go there. Everything that happens in the spiritual worlds, this is their quote, takes place through the medium of the Sefirot. However, as previously mentioned, they are not G-D, and the Kabbalists warn that one should not pray to them. In the words of Tikkun Zohar, Elijah opens his discourse and said, Master of the worlds, you are one, but not in the numerical sense. You are exalted above all the exalted ones, hidden from all the hidden ones. No thought can grasp you at all. You are he who has brought forth 10 garments, and we call them 10 Sefirot, and revealed words, and through them you conceal yourself from man. End quote. I think it speaks for itself. And so we have a few points to ponder on, now that I'm hoping that you'll understand what the Sefirot is in its entirety. And so a few points to consider is to understand what is self. It is important to understand that the self is in the mind, in which ideologies and egoic influences come into being. The mind, body, soul, and spirit, as I've said, are the main gates through which they are trying to break into your consciousness. Number 2, goal of the material worshippers. What are their goals? The ultimate outcome is for this to become a god again. They need rituals for it. They're trying to get as many as possible to be the bricks for their temple. When they reach this point, they want to see themselves as the opposition to evolution and growth. They invert all things. That God inverts all things. You can easily buy into it by consenting for information, for example, to be spread around. Like someone sends you a text message of something traumatic and you spread it around without checking its source. It's as simple as that. By agreeing to things because 10 people say yes, you say okay, yes too, because you're too lazy to explore it yourself. And to also act out in accordance to what the leaders of any particular criminal syndicate tells you. When you believe you don't have a choice, then you don't have a choice. And many of these peer pressures are related to people who have already submitted to not having a choice within themselves. So it is a mental control. And to have already within yourself doubts, fear, insecurities, worries, concern, to look at any and everything left, right, and center because you're looking for something, is what is going to always occupy you. Know this, though, very importantly, that death is the ultimate point where all things go towards. All matter returns to the material world. All is already part of the original creator. Your spirit is eternal. Therefore, there is no finale or ending, and the word death is merely the next level of growth and knowledge to be built for you. And so make sure you learn and understand and gain wisdom, living wisdom, not knowledge, wisdom. Because knowledge is only what you've been taught and what you've read about, but wisdom is what you've experienced and what you've practiced through your heart. And so as I've said, Satan, in the previous video, I said Satan does not exist. I'm telling you about Satan now. The self is to be worshipped, is what they do. So they use the word Satan from religious context. As I've said, it's an archetype of the understanding of judgment or adversary. So there is strict judgment over the self, and the self is then worshipped in that way. The flesh is to become deified by them. They seek that. And there is an egoic and emotional impulse drive to it at all times. It's a primal based worshipping with the destruction of everything in nature that must become inverted so that they can become the gods. That is what they want. Okay, that is the promise that was given to them by that God that they have brought in. Religious traditions are also used to personify this deity, this archetype. So demons, Satan, all of these things are all archetypal descriptions of what they use to freak you out so that you will buy into it, so that you will just go, oh God, there's some evil. Oh no, evil exists. Oh dear, and I give up, and yeah, that's the end of me. And so the system, therefore, in itself is the God of impulses and primal needs. That's the only thing you need to take note of. Keep in mind that the system is not based on governments or religions or religious or constructs or schools or freaking anything like that. It's got nothing to do with it, but it is all of those things in plural. The system overlay, therefore, is in itself a God of impulses and primal needs also. And the belief to associate themselves as the adversary means that they are telling you, the person who reads about the devil, that they are the devil, so that you are scared shitless, so that you just fall in and collapse into that. It's like roaring at you, but using a microphone, using your microphone to roar at you. That's what I'm saying. So is it possible for anyone to be part of the problem and possibly not know that they are? Yes, absolutely. How do I know this? How do you know? If you are lazy to go within, to think, and do not want to confront yourself, that is already a telltale sign. If you want to keep bringing in other people as the reason for your fall, that is how it works. It means you already then are part of being part of the system overlay. You've already submitted yourself to that. Because as I'm laying it out to you in this way, I'm thinking many people are thinking, well, this is rather a harsh explanation, but it has to be so that you can understand. And so someone who is not even shown anything other than believing that others must look after them and believing that it's others' faults and believing that it's that person or this one and saying, but I'm a Christian, but I behave like a Satanist, or I'm a Jew and I behave like a something else, or whatever the case may be. It's a problem. The one thing you need to keep in mind is you will know the tree by its fruits. It always reveals itself to you. So your mindset determines how you think and what you decide to believe in. I always say, do not believe. Don't believe. Be within. The system and its minions or ministers of magic require to present to you an ideology that is so absurd that it would be debasing all forms of logical intelligence. If people accept this belief and accept what is debased as a base level existence, in other words, eat bugs, then if 10 people do it, then maybe it's not so bad. You've already then bought in and become one of the Terracotta army people. In other words, to accept conflict as if there is no choice or free will, then you've already also bought into being a slave and a part of the Terracotta army. And so they present to you a debasement template. And if you buy and submit into it, if 10 people do it, maybe I should too, idea. If you don't accept this, then you cannot be controlled. That is as simple as that. Think for yourself. The agreement and or exchange of a template to become ordained to submit to the system is the contract. That requires the system to function. But the system requires minions to present it, of course. So, what do? They show flesh market media so that it becomes agreeable, accessible to everything and everyone. And we have also discussed this in the Fire Walk With Me videos, so please go back there again. It is an agreement to buy into shit. You agree to be subjected, then you will buy into anything. In simple terms, if you worship the self, as I've been saying for a long time, you are worshipping the flesh. If you worship things physically and matter, you are part of the problem. And the material realm in which you are functioning as is then your construct. If you choose not to be in any of that stuff, well, then the opposite happens for you. The greatest sin or flaw is the worship of the self via external matter, saving the self at the cost of another, or sacrificing the self at the cost of another. That is vanity. The original reality was created, and in it a flaw was presented. It was put there deliberately. You need to understand that. You needed to learn to overcome that, but you didn't. And that's why the things are the way they are now, because you just became lazy and apathetic. So, there are people that have been talking about this work for so long. The quantum of conscience, Matthew, he refers to and talks about the system and its events as a stalled century, as well as the not-milk system. Mark Passio refers to it as de facto Satanism, and many others that have been presenting the information as much as I've been presenting the information for quite some time. And I'm calling it the system overlay. It's the same thing. The lower debased expression can also be found from an example. A very good example was Aleister Crowley. I just thought of it now, where he called himself the Beast, or whatever, Agent 666, whatever drama was used. And basically what he was explaining to you was because of his vanity, the worship of his flesh, he had managed to become a master of his flesh. And so, yes, he became a beast. He dehumanized himself entirely towards the end. Although many others will obviously perhaps disagree with me on that. That is what I am interpreting from his presentation, his experience. So understand the difference about what the self is, because I started with it, and I want you to understand what is self-love. Understand the difference of what is self. Self must not be based on external identification and association with the external world and its systems. There is a difference between love and self-love. Love is to love the self, care for the self, not at the cost of the self of others, or for others, or with others. So I'll say it again. Love and care for yourself. Go within and explore your inner temple. Do this not ever at the cost of yourself or others, and you are on the right track. Then there is love of the self, care for the self, nurture the self, but it's at the cost of the self, and on top of it, that is called vanity. And so I would like to ask you to learn to discern what the body of this presentation really means to you. And we'll talk again. Thank you.